Tonight, Ghana feels the heat as Nigeria shuts down its borders to countries across the sub-region. We'll hear from the Foreign Affairs Minister and the Trade Minister, who are both pleading with the Nigerians to open the borders.
And so why closing our borders? We must be mindful of some of these agreements that we've entered into, so that we are not seen as a country, like a rogue country that goes into an agreement and thereafter begin to do something else.
We will hear from the Foreign Affairs Minister and the Trade Minister. Plus, Guta is pleading for some intervention as they are hit hard by the action taken by our Nigerian partners. And top story is always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion. Vodafone, the future is exciting. Ready. Gassem Cement, the nation builder, and Antarte Furniture, designed for life. Ghana is feeling the heat as Nigeria has shut down its borders in effort to stop what it describes as food smuggling and other criminal activities, as well as encourage an agricultural revival in that country. Today we know that over the last few days, the Foreign Minister Shirley Ekobotwe and the Trade Minister Alan Chemanting have met with their Nigerian counterparts in a desperate attempt to get Nigeria to reverse its decision. Already, the Ghana Union of Traders Association says the closure of the borders is beginning to already bite as their members are being turned away from the borders with their goods. The association is calling on government to act swiftly to counter what they describe as protectionist agenda by Nigeria. I want you to first listen to the Trade Minister. He's been traveling with the Foreign Affairs Minister to Nigeria, and they've been meeting with their counterparts there. Listen to Alan Chemanting.
If there are two countries that show brotherly collaboration and love, it's Ghana and Nigeria. Everybody knows. It's only when it comes to football that sometimes the friction becomes more intense. But and I'm saying this with all seriousness. I mean, but occasionally, in business, you may have challenges that come up. The important thing is to have a formula for dealing with challenges when they come up, as we are trying to do. So it is true that recently there were some challenges. I personally led the delegations to the area, and it was just a very specific area. This is not something that things were all over the place in the whole country, just in one particular area, in one sector. And interestingly, I led a delegation of some colleagues of mine to deal with, and immediately we started talking. The problem was dissolving by the minute. And that is why you have not heard, apart from what came up in the news, that, but any country that has a vibrant media, as we do have both in Nigeria and in Ghana, you can see sometimes what you hear may not necessarily reflect, what is actually on the ground. So we continue working in harmony and collaboration. When issues arise, we sit and talk, and that is why you can see that there's no tension. But we need, within the context of ECOWAS, to try and deal in a more structured way with some of these challenges. You referred to the law. Yes, there's domestic legislation in our country that basically has been the basis for the representation that has been made by the Ghanaian traders. On the side of the Nigerian traders, they've also made references to the ECOWAS protocol, which also has provisions that support the case made. So this is basically a situation between local legislation and when these things occur, you sit and talk and then you resolve that. So I'm pleased that we found a way to work together to deal with this problem.
So were the Nigerians convinced? You heard our trade minister say we need to talk, and you're making some progress. Well, we also heard from Nigeria's Foreign Affairs Minister Jeffrey Onyoma. He said the move to shut down the borders to the rest of the sub-region is not targeted at any particular country, but criminals.
I think the first thing to say in response to this, we're within ECOWAS, we respect the ECOWAS rules, free movement of persons and goods, and that should continue. This is it's targeting criminal activities, not countries, and so I think that has to be clear. So, in addressing a particular country's issue, it will not be a disadvantage to any other country, because for us it's really just a measure to address a particular mischief. In terms of timelines, we're getting there with regards to the mischief that we want to address, but clearly there's going to be flexibility to maintain the spirit and the rules of ECOWAS, and that's what we're trying to do with Ghana, to find solutions to particular challenges that we're facing, and we're pretty confident that we'll be able to address that very quickly.
Well, the Nigerian Senate, they've been discussing this particular matter. As you can imagine, the big brother, when it shuts its doors, will cause ripple effects, which we see now. We'll be speaking to Guta shortly. They are feeling the pinch of this, asking government to retaliate. We'll speak to them shortly. But my colleague, Elton Brobe, is with me in the studio. He's been monitoring the discussions on the floor of the Senate in Nigeria. What's happening there?
So what happened is that Senate President Ahmed Tawan read a statement from the president in which it communicates to members of Senate about government intention to undertake a temporary closure of all borders in and around Nigeria. And the reason provided by the Senate president is that they are checking importation into Nigeria of cheap and inferior goods, as well as illegal, exports of some petroleum products from Nigeria to neighboring countries. The statement, however, did not give timelines. So members were unhappy with the fact that...
In other words, they're going to close it, but we don't know how long.
They don't know when they're going to reopen the borders. And members are of the view that Nigeria is signatory to a lot of ECOWAS protocols. So by doing this, then you are contravening what you have, signed on to. And we can listen to the discussion as it happened on the floor of the Nigerian Senate.
Mr. President, I think when we're going to do this kind of policy next time, I think it's important that people look at the cause and effect of these policies. They look at what are the alternatives. If you're going to stop something like this, you have to look at, what are the alternatives, especially those that are adversely impacted, affected by such action, especially those living along the borders.
There's need for us to sanitize this our border with all our neighbors. But in doing this, Mr. President, I think we should think this through. I support in its entirety the closure of the border, maybe for a time, maybe 1 month or so, for them to now be ingenious and think about how we can have a lasting solution to what is happening. We have multilateral and bilateral agreement within the West African sub-region. We have the ECOWAS that we've signed to, that allow us to open our borders to all kinds of people and persons. And so why closing our borders? We must be mindful of some of this agreement that we've entered into, so that we are not seen as a country, like a rogue country that goes into an agreement and thereafter begin to do something else. And so I think that the way forward, Mr. President, is for us as a country to engage those countries that border us, because we seem to have a long stretch of border that runs into hundreds of kilometers. The only way we can put a permanent solution to this is for us to patrol this border. We are the Border Commission. They used to have aircraft.
On the phone line with me right now is the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA's National Welfare Officer, Benjamin Yeboah. Mr. Yeboah, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you very much for having me.
Tell me, what is the situation when you get to the Nigerian border with your goods as your members travel into Nigeria and back?
Well, just this afternoon, we had one of our members coming to our head office. He came to complain that he went to Nigeria. He usually plies his trade in Nigeria. And he went for some goods, which he was bringing down to Ghana to sell. Unfortunately, when he got to the border, he was told it was closed, and therefore he can't go through with his items. So he has to go back to his supplier to tell him the problem is faced. Unfortunately for him, the supplier told him that, well, unfortunately, this problem, and therefore he used the money. And therefore, our member had to leave the goods with the supplier and come back to Ghana without the goods and without his money. So this is just a practical example of what is going on now.
When did you start noticing this?
About 2 weeks ago, when we started getting some complaints from our members that this is what was going on at the border. And therefore, we issued a press release and asked what was going on. Because if there was anything of such, thing, we would expect that, as part of ECOWAS, the ECOWAS Commission would be notified, member countries would be notified, and then something of a sort in terms of a write-up or an official announcement will come up. Nothing of that sort. So we asked the question, what was going on? I mean, we listen to the Nigerian Senate. They are not even discussing why the closure. It's like putting the cat before the horse. Seriously, it's a serious infringement on these treaties that we've all signed to. And in Ghana, we should get up and question certain laws that are not being implemented. And we are told of ECOWAS treaties which even give caveats. And therefore, today we are being told that Nigeria can take certain steps because they are looking at what? Security, smuggling. Don't we have all these problems here? Don't we have porous borders where smuggling is going on? Goods are brought in, flooded our markets, some that are of inferior quality, some whom we found some Nigerians involving in. Have we closed our borders? It's seriously very unfair on the part of our Nigerian counterparts if they want to go in this way. Then what is the African Continental Free Trade coming to do if they can get up any time and then close borders and say what they are telling us now? It's really, really unfortunate.
It is interesting. Nigeria is complaining about criminal activity, inferior goods, etc. Isn't that the same? Aren't these the same concerns GUTA had very recently? You backed your members in Kumasi and Accra to almost remove the Nigerians from your market.
Because there was an interagency committee that did some work in Kumasi. And we found some of their nationals involving in some of these various activities. But the point is that did it necessitate us closing our borders? We were fighting it internally to see. And even that our attention was drawn to the fact that let us be careful, we might have reprisals, and what does we have to cool down. And what we did, we are still talking to authorities. We didn't do anything drastic like they are trying to do. And it's not just border closing. They are doing a whole sanitization of the system. Like one of their senators was saying, they are doing e-registration where all foreigners in the country are being registered. They've given an amnesty. If you fail to register, they will deport you. They've deported over 2,000 foreign immigrants, some of whom are Ghanaians. So that is what they are doing. We should learn from Nigeria. They are putting Nigeria first. And any treaty, whether be it Africa or ECOWAS, second.
Have you, because we just seen that our Foreign Affairs Minister, Anna Lanchamanting, a high-powered delegation, have been meeting with their counterparts in Nigeria. Nigeria is insisting that they have to do this. What sort of representations have you made to the Trade Ministry and others on this matter? And what feedback have you received from as far as GUTA is concerned?
Well, the good news was that on the last minute, we had one of our members being invited to join the delegation to Abuja. And therefore, we had a first-hand information from them. Well, per the information we got, after deliberation between the two sides, Nigeria have asked Ghana to put up some modalities as to how best we can work this thing out. So that is what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade are working on now. We are just also trying to push it in that whatever it is, we have locked up goods in both sides. That should move. And therefore, even if there should have been a leeway, give some 2 week, moratorium so that people can do their trading, and then they should know that in 2 weeks' time we are closing borders to check certain things. But people don't get to the border and you are told it's closed and there's no official information out there. So that if I don't have to even change any money and go, I know that. But then you are surprised. We think it's not the best. And therefore we are hoping that the modalities that the two ministries will be putting together will have some of these things we are talking about. They should try and open the border. If they said it's not targeted, for instance, to Ghanaians, then let's sit down like we did. They should look at the modalities that we send to them. And then let's have a practical, management of the situation, so that we don't suffer like we suffer. Because it's sending wrong signals to our members here. We are still trying to talk to them to calm down while we see how best this thing can be worked out.
From what you're saying, a lot of your members, Ghanaian traders, have their goods locked up in Nigeria that they cannot evacuate. They cannot, take out of the country.
Yes, some of our members have their goods in there. They can't bring it out. Some wanted to take it, now they have to stop. And some of these in the industrial players, I hear some of them to have goods locked up in containers that they were taking there. Master, it's a free movement of goods and services. That is what the treaty is about. It's not you going to stay there permanently and making that your place without the requisite documentation. But to do this, you are impeding the very treaty that we all signed to. And that is what is worrying.
But from what I read, this closure, this shut border closure, it's only for land borders. Aren't you exploring the possibility of flying these goods out?
My brother, see, that is what is all about. I mean, how many of our members can afford that place and move that limited amount of goods by air? I mean, how feasible is that? And what direct seaports are we going to have? There should be, these are practical problems that we can't do. It's going to be very cost effective doing this kind of thing. It's not practical. They should let us sit down and see how if they said it's not targeted as experts say. Then let us see how best we can all work this thing out so that we can get our businesses flowing. Otherwise, what they are indirectly telling us is that, please, forget about any treaty. Nothing is going to happen. ECO is coming. ECO wouldn't work. If from day one we start having this kind of things, then it's a wrong signal Nigeria will be sending. I think they should quickly rethink it and let's see how best we can work this thing out so that it doesn't get to a point that it becomes a tit for tat affair.
And you say tit for tat. I've heard you suggest, Guta suggests that Ghana should retaliate. That will make this worse.
That is the point. But then if you keep on telling me that Nigeria first, you are telling me entirely that it's Ghana first. And then when does that take us? That's why we've all signed into treaties. And therefore, whatever we do, we are mindful of those treaties. But immediately do something before you even go to your own Senate to discuss it. What is that? What is that?
So tell me, as we speak right now, do you have any hope that these goods that are locked up in Nigeria will be evacuated anytime soon?
Well, Ghanaians, we are very diplomatic, so you can imagine the foreign minister and then the trade ministers were very diplomatic at their best, and therefore they were able to have that. And we are hoping the negotiations they had will have a leeway that at least, even if it's not all the borders, at least we'll have some understanding between Ghana and Nigeria, which can enable the trade to flow between the two countries, if not opening all the borders. That is why we are hopeful. And they show that because other than that, it's going to be a problem. If you all know that we are in October, nearing November, and Christmas is close by, and people are trying to do some business before the close of year. And I don't think it's best having these kind of operations this time.
Well, thank you very much. That is the the National Welfare Officer, Benjamin Yeboah, about the situation in Nigeria in the last few hours. In fact, a couple of days back, they decided to shut their borders. It's beginning to bite now. You've heard Guta say many of their members have their goods stuck in Nigeria. They cannot evacuate because the borders have simply been closed. You cannot move anything out of Nigeria right now if you're a trader, and you can't move anything in. And there's a high-level delegation, high-power delegation led by the Trade Minister and the Foreign Affairs Minister. They were in Nigeria talking to the Nigerian counterparts. They are not barging yet. It's become a discussion in the Senate itself. And there too, the government is insisting this has to be done to deal with criminal activity, importation and exportation of inferior material, smuggling and others. The senators themselves are opposed to this because of the many sub-regional treaties that have been signed on free movement of goods and services. We're watching this space. We're trying to get onto the phone lines and speak to the Foreign Affairs Ministry on this. What real hard progress have they made in these talks with the Nigerian counterparts in an attempt to resolve this particular impasse, as many Ghanaian traders have their goods locked up in Nigeria that they can't move because of the border shutdown? Stay with us.